This is exciting because which Canadian players have deep ties to BC?
Well, it's safe to say there are four players on Team Canada that have a really strong connection to Vancouver and to BC. Let's start with Alphonso Davies. We know he played here in Vancouver from the time he was 14 years old. He joined the Whitecaps residency program at that time in 2014. Now, he's Canada's captain, but he didn't play in the opening game of the tournament as he nursed a hamstring injury. We also have right back Alistair Johnston. He was born in Vancouver, but relocated to Montreal and then Toronto when he was quite young, and calls both Toronto and Vancouver home. And we have Alistair Johnston's backup, who is also playing at right back. His name is Nico Segur. He's from North Burnaby, played his youth soccer at Cliff Avenue United and Mounted FC in the North Burnaby area.
Wow.
And we have Joel Waterman, who's from Aldergrove, played his youth soccer in Langley and Surrey, and is the oldest player oldest of the BC players on Team Canada, and has a really interesting story on how he eventually made it to pro soccer.
Okay, love to hear about that. Now, of course, people have been watching Alphonso Davies. Tell me more about his time here in Vancouver, and are we going to see him play?
That's I think it's the multi-million-dollar question for this tournament. Now, Davies, as I mentioned, joined the Whitecaps residency program in 2015 from Edmonton when he was only 14 years old. And when he relocated here, he was studying at Burnaby Central Secondary. You know that school quite well. While he was part of the team's youth program. Born in Ghana to parents who fled the Liberian Civil War, Alphonso Davies only became a Canadian citizen in 2017 while he was playing with the Whitecaps. And we know Canadian soccer fans hope he can play a big role for Canada in the World Cup. Davies did score Canada's first ever goal at the World Cup. That was in 2022 in Qatar. But he's still hurt, being sidelined and missed the first game of this tournament with that hamstring injury. I did get a chance to speak with Canada's former goalkeeper who played with the 1986 World Cup team. His name is Paul Dolan, otherwise known as Dolly the goalie. And he's an analyst for MLS on Apple TV. And he expects Davies to be a factor in this tournament when he does eventually get here.
And I think we will see him. I think they're being extra cautious. Maybe we don't see him in the first game, possibly not even in the second, but then you'd think that he'd be prepared and ready to go, maybe to win the group in that game against Switzerland, and then hopefully for the knockout stages as well.
Well, Davies is on a modified return to play, and I'm not sure if he'll be back in the lineup for tomorrow against Qatar. But I know he's been eyeing that return because he hasn't played at BC Place since 2022.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, we are all waiting with bated breath. Waiting and watching. Now, what about Alistair Johnston? Because as you said, he was born in Vancouver but left quite young. So tell me about those connections to Vancouver.
Well, born in Vancouver to a soccer-loving family. His father won 2 provincial and national soccer championships playing for Vancouver Westside FC, but his family left here when he was 4 and eventually settled in Toronto. Johnston, as I mentioned, calls both Vancouver and Toronto home, and Paul Dolan knew the Johnston family when he lived here, and he told me Alistair brings a lot to Canada's World Cup team.
Well, I worked with his dad for about 10 years when I was working in the sporting goods industry in BC. And so right from the first time Alistair was born and kicking a ball, I've been following his actions when he moved back to Toronto and Montreal even for a while. But I love Alistair Johnston for every reason that every Canadian fan does, is his commitment to the craft as well. We talked about Sebastian Berhalter for a moment there, and some of the same things remind me of him, a guy who's just worked through everything to become as good a player as he is. Very good on the ball, always seems to make the right decision, quick getting forward, very aggressive defensively, just a smart player who brings that team spirit as well that's very important to the side.
I love these stories about I knew them when, right? and you can see the greatness. I saw it back then. So as you mentioned, though, Johnston's understudy is also from here.
Yes, and that's Nico Segur. He's 22 years old, from North Burnaby. He plays professionally in Croatia. And like Alphonso Davies, he's a dual national. So he holds both Canadian and Croatian citizenship. and played for both national programs. He only joined Canada's senior national program just a couple years ago in 2024. I connected with his childhood soccer coach. His name is Dominic Puglisi from Cliff Avenue United Soccer Club in North Burnaby. Now, Dominic coached Nico from for a couple years from age 8 alongside his own son.
And I was pretty much coaching Nico when he was a young kid, probably when we're looking at about maybe between 8 and 10 years old. I was coaching Nico along with my son, and I was a volunteer coach at Cliff Avenue. So he was one of the bright kids, one of the bright stars already from such a young age. You could see that little that natural little talent that he had from when he was really young. Loved the game, loved the game, loved to play. He's always trying to show off a little bit in front of everybody else, but he was a fantastic kid. So these kids always have that aspiration to think that one day it's going to be that dream is going to be a reality. Being that there weren't so many stars from our area, we weren't we really couldn't compare him to anybody, and he really. But I always the kid always probably aspired to be a pro soccer player. That's probably been his dream forever. Right.
It's all about dreams. What about Langley's Joel Waterman? Tell us about his path.
Now, his is probably the most interesting and the hardest path to describe. Now, his path goes through Trinity Western University, and at age 30, he's one of the older players on Canada's roster. I got a chance to speak to his coach at Trinity Western, Mike Sharon.
When Joel came to us back in the day, I mean, this wasn't on the radar. It wasn't, that Joel was going to make the national team, that Joel was going to be able to play, be a part of the World Cup here in Canada and in Vancouver. And so, I mean, obviously, super proud of him, super proud of all he's done. His hard work and everything else has paid off.
And Waterman graduated from Trinity Western University in 2019 with a media and communications degree. We're quite familiar with that. He started playing minor pro first, semi-pro in Calgary before he eventually got to the MLS and became the first 5-year U Sports player to make a World Cup team playing for Canada. Now, there's several Whitecaps, 3 Whitecaps that are playing for the team. Those are Sebastian Berhalter, Andres Kubas, and Ryan Alumi. Interesting thing about Ryan is that he is a Canadian who also holds Tunisian heritage and chose to play for the Tunisian team instead of Canada. There are also 5 former Whitecaps that are also playing for Team Canada in this World Cup as well.
We're everywhere.
Yes.
Zameer, this is great. Thank you very much.
No problem.